Welcome to the Aligned Powerhouse, the podcast for executive women who are done leading from burnout and ready to rise from alignment. I'm your host, Dr. Brittany McGeehan, licensed psychologist, high performance and mindset coach, and guide for high-achieving women who are ready to lead, live, and love without abandoning themselves. Here, we unpack the nervous system truths, mindset shifts, and emotional patterns that drive your leadership so you can build power from the inside out. Let's get into it. Alrighty, y'all. Hello. Welcome to today's episode. I am so excited. Today, we are going to be talking about the idea that money does, in fact, actually buy happiness. Okay. And I am aware this may be a little bit controversial. This is definitely, okay. I am practicing courage real time because this is one of my most unpopular beliefs that I've said would probably get me canceled off the internet, but here we go. I think it's something that is really important for us to talk about, and especially if we are going to really unpack what it takes to live our most aligned and expansive versions of our lives. I'm such a big believer that you do not have to be an extraordinary person to live an extraordinary life. You simply need to instill the right habits, mindset patterns, and nervous system regulation to get you where you want to go. So I very firmly believe that one of the biggest lies we have been told is that money doesn't buy happiness. It absolutely can. And research backs it up. The question here is, what kind of happiness is it buying and how does it do this? And then more specifically, how do you leverage these same principles despite like whatever tax bracket you are in? Okay. So I really want to acknowledge here that there is so much shame around wanting more. It is something that I hear time and time again from clients, from friends in networking events. It is, I already have enough, or I already have more than enough, and I want more. And I don't know when this shifted in our culture, and I couldn't even tell you exactly where this comes from, but especially for women, especially for people who identify as being a helper, especially for people who grew up being told we don't need all that, there is so much shame attached to desire and wanting more, whether that is more purpose, whether that is more money, whether that is more optionality and choices, right? The reality is that money can provide these things when it is stewarded well, and that there's nothing wrong with wanting more. This does not make you ungrateful for the things that you have. It simply means that you are in an expansive season and you have a vision that is bigger than the life that you're currently living. The issue here is that it gets fused typically from a caregiver who does not have access to the child's vision. So maybe the kiddo really wants the $50 Barbie doll. I don't know. And caregiver can't afford that. And so instead of saying, hey, we're choosing to use our money in a different way, or these are actually your choices right now, or even better, if you want that $50 Barbie doll, girl, go get it. Right? That's what my kid was told when they wanted the $70 scooter. It was, heck yeah, you can do it. And here's how you can make that money in order to do that. Because currently I am not open, and I did not share it this way, but it was like, we're choosing not to spend our money this way. Right? So giving her the option to go and do that. So here's the issue, is that money itself does not create joy. Okay. What money creates is options, and options give you autonomy, and autonomy is dramatically going to affect well-being. So what people hear is that money doesn't matter, but in reality, what I will tell you, the research, and in a minute here, we're going to actually get into the neuroscience behind all of this. But what the research tells us is that after basic needs are met, money continues to improve life when it increases agency, time, security, generosity, and freedom from chronic stress. This is the key here, right? Is that money helps you optimize, but it gets misunderstood and it gets oversimplified. And that is where things can absolutely run amok here. So zooming in even farther, and yes, we're going to walk away at the end of this episode. I probably should have shared this at the beginning, but I'm going to give you some hacks and some things to be thinking through, because I've got a few different thoughts. I had so many notes on this episode, but I've got a few different thoughts that I want to share with y'all. But we really do need to understand where we're starting and why this is an issue, and before we get into here's what you do about it, right? And the answer is not like go make more money, but we'll get there. So here's the thing, is that chronic financial uncertainty is actually keeping the nervous system in a fight or flight state of vigilance. Okay. So what happens whenever you have access to more resources, and this is what is actually happening under the hood, is that money is actually buying happiness primarily through this concept called oh my gosh, sorry guys. I'm like eating breakfast while I'm recording these, and it's probably not the best idea. But primarily what it's getting you is allostatic regulation. Okay, so basically this is a fancy physiological way of saying the reduction of chronic biological stress. Okay. So I want you to think about scarcity. When you are in scarcity, you're constantly looking for places of unpredictability and places of stress. Money goes in and it actually provides a shield from these things, okay? If I don't have to worry about whether or not I can afford my groceries, if I don't have to worry about whether or not there's enough time in the day, or I'm going to get to spend the time that I want doing the things that I want, well, now money is literally deactivating the threat network in the amygdala, and it is providing less friction throughout your day. Okay. So I've literally read studies that have referred to having not even big wealth, right? But even just access or enough, an abundance of finances as being a financial shield from all of the forms of human misery that are out there. Okay. So think about it as it can deactivate the amygdala. It can help cortisol levels in your body decrease. And people want to say that you don't need money to be happy. And I'm not arguing against that necessarily, but what I am saying is that it is stressful to be broke. And anyone who says different is, I believe, in a lot of denial. Now, I also think it is stressful to try to make a lot of money. Like, there are ends of this that can be argued both ways, but the reality is that money is going to offer you cognitive bandwidth. It is going to offer you an abundance mindset, which accesses greater vision and connection to a higher power. It is going to decrease your decision fatigue. It is going to support executive function and emotional regulation. Recently, I worked with a stylist. I've actually been working with her on and off throughout this year. And she is fantastic. Elisa Ellis, Turnkey Style is the name of her business. She's fantastic. She is no nonsense, to the point, while also being so warm and such an expansive human in general. And I knew going into this year, I knew that I was going to be the business investment, because for the last 3-4 years, I've been in a season of really heavy business investment, and I wasn't open to making substantial shifts to my wardrobe, or there was so much that was wrapped up in raising babies and literal growing babies, right? But I knew that this year my son was turning 2, and this has been on my calendar forever, that this was the year that I got to be the business investment. And so I worked on my style. I have worked with a nutritionist. I've worked on exercising in a way that feels loving, but also really plays with this idea of being an athlete that I haven't tapped into for years. And I very specifically knew not only was I going to invest in my wardrobe and dressing my body in a way that felt very joyful, but I also knew before going into it, I was going to work with someone. And so I saw Lisa at an event. I had seen her stuff online. And so I kind of walked right up to her and was just like, hey, take my money. I'm interested in working with you because I want the end product to be excellent. I want it to feel like me. This is not an area of expertise for me, and I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think about it because I have plenty of other things going on in my life. And so I want to paint you two different scenarios here. The first is the opportunity to still invest in a wardrobe, right? Maybe saying I'm still going to go buy these clothes, but I need to think about the colors and the styles and how I want to feel. And then I need to think about ordering these things, taking them to get tailored, and actually watching for returns, things like that, right? One could say this is still very expansive. But having access to a different level of wealth or income or revenue, however you want to define it, is going to offer this other experience where you actually bring in an expert who their job is to literally hold this entire project in their mind. Right? What happens when you work with a stylist is you sit down and you say, hey, here's what I'm looking for. Here's what I like. And if you're anything like me, I actually really struggle to put words to the vision that I have in my mind. And with my style, I really had not invested in this element of myself in years because I had been in maternity clothes. It had probably been a very solid 5 years since I had thought about how do I want to truly present myself, because I had either been pregnant or I needed an outfit where I could whip a titty out if I needed to because I was breastfeeding, or then I was pregnant again and then I was back in the breastfeeding season. There were other constraints around how I was presenting myself, right? And so instead, I outsourced. And what happened was I had capacity not just to get this project done, but continue to focus on my business and my kids and all of this. But it became, and it is one of the most luxurious experiences that you can really truly get to inhabit, right? And that comes with money. No one likes talking about it, but it takes money to work with a stylist. It takes money to buy brands that you really enjoy and that are going to be substantial and work for your season of life. Elisa was not only thinking about what was going to look good on my body shape, which is what I was thinking about, she also had the forethought to think about the fact that I am mom to 2 little humans. And she knew that I, as her client, I like to be outside. I like to be in my flowers. I like to go and do things. I like to be at the lake, although I'm learning I like to be at the lake, and then I like to be back inside. I am not outdoorsy. And I like to go down to the country club, and I move in a lot of very different spaces. All of that has to be taken into account whenever I think about my wardrobe, right? Those were not things I had been thinking about, but because this is her expertise, I saved myself, I would imagine, not only hours, but also so much money, right? When we talk about money being able to access joy, the buffer here that was provided was my bandwidth was protected. Instead of going and thinking about all these details and then being like, oh, this doesn't fit or this does fit or whatever, instead, I was able to hire an expert, bring her in, say, this is what I want. And then she said, okay, here you go. Do you like this one or this one? And I got to go through and pick what I wanted. She literally orders all of it for you. So think about that executive functioning. And if you're ADHD, you really get this. She went through, she ordered everything. She let me know if the size was out. She went and bought multiples of different sizes. She gave little feedback here and there, I think this looks like this. And then she brought it to my home. It was a whole experience. And she takes notes on her clipboard the whole time. She's holding all of this information, guys, that I would have had to have been holding. And then she took things to the tailor for me. It was just a phenomenal life-giving experience. And it was so much fun. It was so much fun. And I will tell you that I also last week or like the week before, I went into a Banana Republic. I was like, I'm gonna go shopping because I like didn't have anything to do during the day. And I was choosing not to work. So I took a nap and I went shopping, and that was my day. And I thought I would really enjoy it. And guys, I didn't like it. I hated it. It was so overwhelming. And again, these are the things you don't think about if you have access to a little bit of financial cushion, right? Or protection, and you know how to invest it, is you don't think about how taxing it is to actually walk into a store and have to choose something for yourself. And again, I'm not trying to sound like a brat, but this is also what part of what goes through anyone's mind that they probably have too much shame to talk about. But like, guys, walking into a store, I got to think about what colors look good. I got to think about the cut. I got to think about the material. Then I have to put it on and see if it looks good. And I'm trying to make all these decisions on my own. Like, it's a lot unless that's something that really thoroughly brings you joy. Now I'm protected from all of those decisions, and I just get to be excited when I get dressed in the morning. And there's so much shame in our culture right now about normalizing the desire to have access to these kinds of resources and experiences. And I think it's a lot of BS. I just think it's unnecessary, because the reality is that anything that is going to buy back time, attention, intention is going to be huge, whether that is hiring help. So I feel the exact same way about house management. Having someone who I know is going to come in and take care of the groceries and the pantry and the lunches and the snacks and the resetting the home. This doesn't mean that I don't do those things. It just means that I'm buying back a little bit of my cognitive capacity, buying back time. So that way I do get to be more intentional about where I'm actually spending my time. The reality is that you have access to better healthcare. You can work with a functional medicine doctor versus someone who is going to potentially profit off of your illness, right? Traveling, these things are good for you. Investing in coaching, experiencing what life actually has to offer. What we know from research is that these are good things for our physiology. And I believe that it is time to stop shaming people for having a desire to want those things, right? Here is the thing, is that money doesn't make anyone more peaceful. Money magnifies what is already there, though. So if you are someone who already has peace, who already has a clear idea of what your values are, those things become magnified as you continue to build wealth. So here is what I want you to think about, okay? What would you actually buy if guilt wasn't making the decision and if you had access to it, okay? Because most of the time, what I will tell you is that you have access to way more than you realize. And I would also argue that most people have access to a ton. They're just not willing to sacrifice in order to get there, okay? And so here I want you thinking not bigger, but just more aligned. So some examples of this are different types of childcare, cleaners or the frequency at which cleaners are coming, therapy or coaching support, having a private chef, having a personal assistant and an executive assistant, right? Having flowers in your home every week. Again, I want you thinking about what purchase would actually create more emotional capacity and intention in your life. So here, we're really not focusing on status. What the research tells us is that if you're seeking to build something superficial, yeah, that's not associated with anything helpful. But if you are using money to build capacity and emotional warmth into your life, that is huge. That is something worth desiring and going for. And the question I really want to leave y'all with is If you are someone who has held this belief that money doesn't buy happiness, my real question underneath that is, what are you protecting yourself from? Because the reality is that research would say something very different. And typically what's really underneath this is fear of lack, fear of what if I want this thing and I don't get it? And for me, that shift is the first step to really unlocking your next level. Alrighty, y'all. That is all I have for you today. I hope that today's episode was helpful. Genuinely, thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here, and I will see you on the next one. Alrighty, friend, that is all for today's episode of the Aligned Powerhouse podcast. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. And do me a favor, if this episode resonated, I want you to share it with another powerhouse woman in your life who is ready to lead and love from a place of self-trust. And don't forget to follow, subscribe, and leave a quick rating or review. It really does help more women find this work. New episodes drop every week. Until then, lead with self-trust and let yourself be seen.